This video is brought to you by Policy Genius. If you have family members who depend on your income, you need life insurance, and that's where Policy Genius comes in. More about them in a bit. George S. Patton once said, "Wars may be fought with weapons, but they are won by men." That may have been a quote about the honor, skill, and mettle of soldiers, but it can also apply to the use of these impractical weapons, which seem more likely to help you lose a fight than to win one. Number 10. Davy Crocket Portable Nuke. It's hard to imagine there's anything you could do to a nuclear weapon to make it more dangerous than it already is, but there was some effort put into making them more portable, which in turn made them frighteningly impractical to use. The Davy Crocket portable nuclear device was about the smallest warhead that could be produced while still being able to actually create a fission reaction. The tiny warhead looked like a watermelon with some fins on the side of it, and it was incapable of being fired from traditional artillery like mortars or other such devices. Instead, it had to be fired from some kind of recoilless gun. That meant a team of 3 soldiers had to be deployed to use it on the battlefield. And with a range of under 3 miles, they were terribly close to wherever the warhead was going to detonate. The risk of exposing yourself to radiation was, of course, extremely high. Luckily, soldiers never had to endure the risk of exposure to radiation because after the Davy Crocket was test-fired in Nevada, it was determined to be so terribly inaccurate that there was no practical way that it could be used in battle. Number 9. Arumi. If you've never seen the Indian weapon known as an Arumi, then it's definitely worth your while to take a look at it. The basic concept is pretty simple. It's like a whip, only instead of a long strap of leather, you're wielding a flexible piece of very sharp metal. And just like a whip, if you're not skilled in using it, it has the likelihood to snap back and cause serious damage to the person wielding it, rather than whatever's being targeted. A combination of whip and sword. Simple versions just feature one single flexible 4 or 5 foot length of metal held by a handle that has a knuckle guard and a thumb guard. The metal is sharp enough to cut flesh. More complicated versions exist with much longer blades and multiple blades attached. Word is that there was even one kind that had 32 different blades. These additional blades made wielding it that much more dangerous. Number 8. Flamethrowers. No one really needs to be told what a flamethrower is these days. They've appeared in enough different kinds of media by now that you've no doubt seen them and have a basic understanding of how they work. A tank of fuel is strapped to the back of a soldier who then has some kind of spraying device hooked up to it that will pump out the fuel and ignite it, creating a constant stream of terrifying hellfire. As effective as a flamethrower is not just as a weapon, but a method of scaring the daylights out of your enemies, it's also a horrible danger to the person wielding it. To start with, the moment a soldier sets foot on the battlefield and lights up a flamethrower, they are literally pointing a light at themselves that any enemy can see and target. Aside from making yourself vulnerable to enemy fire, the fuel tank itself was just as vulnerable, and it could easily be hit by an errant bullet and explode. It's been said that the average lifespan of a flamethrower operator on the battlefield was about 5 minutes. This was due in part to the obvious target they made of themselves and the fact that a flamethrower fuel tank would be completely drained in mere seconds, leaving the flamethrower operator mostly defenseless. Number 7. Duck's Foot Pistol. A duck's foot pistol was what was known as a volley weapon. When in use, you'd be able to fire more than one shot and potentially take out several targets at the same time. If you don't think about it at all and you don't look at the picture of it, it sounds really good. However, the design was remarkably impractical, and unless you managed to get 4 people to stand in front of you at exactly the same spot where the barrels were pointed, it was essentially useless as a weapon. That's not to say there would be no such cases where such a weapon would be impractical. If you were somehow alone against a rush of enemies coming at you from the same direction, you could possibly kill 4 of them if they were grouped together. It's just that what are the odds ever going to be that that happens and you have one of these guns handy? Never mind how you might holster the damn thing. Number 6. Double Barrel Cannon. Even though modern firearms have come a long way, the double-barrel shotgun is still regarded as a powerful and serious weapon. If you want a character to look badass in a movie, give him a double-barrel shotgun. And there was probably some of the same thinking behind the development of the double-barrel cannon back in the day. If a normal cannon is fearsome, then surely a double-barrel cannon would have been awe-inspiring. On paper, the idea of a double-barrel cannon sounds promising. The reality was not quite the same, however. The initial test proved disastrous because the plan was to fire 2 cannonballs that were attached to a chain, creating a destructive scythe-like device that would spin and cut through everything in its path. Unfortunately, if both cannonballs don't fire at exactly the same moment, what you end up doing is destroying the cannon and anyone around it. Word is there is one test fire of such a cannon during the Civil War. The chained balls tore up an acre of cornfields before the chain broke, with one of the cannonballs flying off into a field and killing a cow. Realizing the cannon was going to be too hard to control, it was never used again. You can still see it today at the Athens-Clarke County City Hall in Georgia. Now we'll get back to today's video in just a second, but first, here's a quick word from today's sponsor, Policy Genius. Look, nobody likes to think about life insurance, but the reality is that it's an important layer of protection for many families, especially for single-income households. Fortunately, there's Policy Genius, and their award-winning policy options ranked #1 by Forbes. Whether you've been putting off your purchase or you just never really thought about it, Policy Genius is the team that you want to check in with. This is a third-party marketplace that works for you, not for the insurance companies, so you can trust that their licensed experts are going to give you solid and unbiased advice. Life insurance premiums might seem like a financial drain, but you could save $1,300 or more per year by using Policy Genius to compare life insurance policies. If you're interested, head to policygenius.com to get started, and in just a few minutes you can work out how much coverage you need and compare personalized quotes to find your best price. And when you're ready to apply, the Policy Genius team will handle the paperwork and scheduling for free. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius, and getting covered now locks in your rate. Over the course of a 10 or 20-year policy, those savings add up, and best of all, eligible applicants can get covered in as little as a week. So head to policygenius.com to get started. You'll be glad you did, because when it comes to life insurance, it's nice to get it right. Now let's get back to today's video. Number 5. Schwerer Gustav. There's no denying that the Schwerer Gustav was a massive weapon. In an effort to invade France, Adolf Hitler was looking for a way to penetrate the fortifications of the Maginot Line. The solution that they came up with was a railway-mounted cannon, the likes of which no one had ever seen before. The gun was 12 meters high, 47 meters long, and weighed 1,350 tons. It could fire 10-ton shells from a barrel that was 30 meters in length. They called it the Great Gustav. As potentially devastating as the Gustav was, it became utterly impractical to make frequent use of it. Aside from the fact that it was so big it was easy to spot from the sky, which made it a target, it was also too heavy to travel on normal railway tracks. The Germans had to build reinforced tracks ahead of it whenever they wanted it to go somewhere, which would have been impractical during normal times, let alone during wartime. In order to prepare the cannon for firing, several hours worth of calibration was needed for each shot. That meant they could only shoot a maximum of 14 rounds per day. It also took 4 days to fully assemble the cannon once it was in place. Number 4. Sticky bombs. During the Second World War, nearly 250,000 sticky bombs came into service for British forces. The bomb was essentially a container full of nitroglycerin held inside an extremely sticky bird lime solution in a glass bottle. While they were never officially okayed for military use, obviously they saw a lot of action on the field. The initial plan was to throw them at a distance so the glass would break and the bomb would adhere to a target, but, well, that proved to be very inaccurate. A simpler and more efficient method was to walk up to your target and smash the sticky bomb on the side of it. There was enough explosive to actually get through the armor of some smaller tanks. The big problem with the sticky bomb was the fact that it was so sticky. It had been noted that during training, more than one soldier got a sticky bomb stuck to themselves and had a seriously hard time getting it off while holding onto the handle to ensure that it didn't blow them up. There's at least one story of a soldier who got it stuck to his pants and was only rescued when a fellow soldier pulled the man's pants off, bomb and all. Number 3. Apache Revolver. History is rife with what can best be described as novelty guns like the duck's foot pistol that we saw earlier, but perhaps the most impractical of all the weapons of this sort was the Apache Revolver. Clearly meant to be 3 weapons in one with a knife blade, a gun, and a pair of brass knuckles, it was arguably useless when used as either of these items, let alone trying to use all 3 together. There was no trigger guard for the revolver, which meant that the risk of firing it randomly was always present. The blade was attached very loosely and ran the risk of breaking off, and for whatever reason the brass knuckle portion of the handle was designed so small that only someone with extremely small hands could even hope to get their fingers through the holes. The gun had no sight and essentially no barrel either. It would have been effective at very close range, and that's about it. Because of the lack of trigger guard, you would have to store it unloaded for safety reasons, and loading it meant removing the entire cylinder, so really this was a truly ineffective weapon if you needed to use it at a pinch or at a distance or at all. Number 2. Novgorod. Scottish shipbuilder John Elder thought that you could make a ship wider in the beam with a shallower draft so that it could carry bigger guns while not requiring a lot more power to make it move. The Imperial Russian Navy really liked this idea, and the result was a creation of a warship that was a nearly perfect circle. The idea was that the circular design would offer the greatest displacement of water and the least amount of armor because of the short hull. You could have giant guns on the deck, and with so little side exposed, you wouldn't need to worry about heavy armaments. As a bonus, if a shell hit the side, because it was a circle, odds are it would deflect off anyway. And with no keel, it could patrol extremely shallow waters. When the ship was finally built with a diameter of 100 feet, no one foresaw the major problem that was going to hold it back. Because it was a circle, the steering was almost non-existent. If you wanted to turn the ship around, it took about 45 minutes to do so. And that was on calm seas. In a storm or in a combat situation, the ship would have been utterly useless. Also, because of the hull, it had an incredible amount of drag, so the end result was a ship that was incredibly slow and very hard to steer. Number 1. Blue Peacock Mine. It's hard to overstate how silly the Blue Peacock Mine was. In order to appreciate what a bizarre idea this weapon was, you have to know that it involved the use of live chickens to keep it warm. The way a Blue Peacock mine was supposed to work was that a 10-kiloton nuclear device was to be buried on the North German plain. There they would stay hidden underground until the Soviet army invaded. The mines would be detonated either by tripwire or after an 8-day timer expired. The point was to destroy all the military facilities in the area and prevent the Soviets from occupying the space because of both the destruction and the nuclear contamination. Because of the part of the world this was in, there was a fear that the cold temperatures the mines would be subjected to could be a hazard. Buried underground, the electronics could potentially get too cold to function properly. So the method of preventing this was to have live chickens included inside the mine. They'd have a supply of food and water enough to keep them alive for about a week, and their body heat would be able to keep the mine working. When this information was first declassified, people assumed it was an April Fool's joke since it was on April the 1st, 2004. However, it was no joke. The chicken mine was an all too real idea. So I really hope you liked that video. If you did, please do smash that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.